My name is Veronica Arquilevich Guzman. I'm an artist. I do ceramics and paintings too. I'm from Mexico, but I live now in Portland. And I want to thank the people here at the museum for doing these kind of events. I'm super honored to be here in this beautiful place and I feel very proud. And I'm going to be talking about Lillian Pitt's work. When you enter this room, you can see her work in all the walls, like this and here, and the main piece that is that transparent face that is on the back there. So I chose Lillian Pitt's work because it got my attention, the movement of her pieces and the different materials she uses on her work. And I think Lillian and me, we have a couple of things in common. Like, we feel part of the women community in the world, and we also give everything for what we believe is right. Like, if we have a cause, we fight for it, and we embrace our culture and our traditions, and we portray that in our work. When I met Lillian, it was a pleasure to talk to her and to hear her stories about the Native American, and to see the relation that she has with other artists here in Portland. She's very involved in the community, knows many people, and she talked about many of the artists that their work are here in the museum. And I would love to follow her steps at some point in that and be more involved in the community, because sometimes we artists, we tend to isolate ourselves in our studios and forget about the importance of the community and how many things we can do to get involved. That's why I'm glad, and I like here in US that we have this thing with the organizations and associations that help us to be here, like next to you. And that helped me a lot in the past since I moved from Mexico to here. When I was in Mexico, I used to be like working as an artist, but not very successful because we don't have that involved, and we haven't learned about the associations and the help that we can give each other. So first, I'm going to talk about the piece that you see when you enter, that is this one. And this piece is called She Who Watches. And this is I think is the most important piece that Lillian has. And it's a petroglyphic. The petroglyphics are engravings, rock engravings, and the pictograms are rock paintings. And her work is inspired in both of them. And this piece is originally a petroglyphic that you can find in the Columbia Hill State Park, and is overlooking the Wisham Village. And this village is where the great-grandmother of Lillian used to live. And she was taken there to see this pictograph, and then she was inspired to do this artwork. And the story about this piece, this is the story that she tells. I'm going to read it to you. There was this village on the Washington side of the Columbia Gorge. And this was long ago, when people were not yet people, real people. And that is when we could talk to the animals. And so Coyote, the trickster, came down the river to the village and asked the people if they were living well. And they say, yes, we are, but you need to go to talk to our chief. She lives up the hill. And so he pranced up the hill and asked her if she was a good chief or not. And she said, my people is living well. We have lots of salmon, deer, berries, roots, and good houses. Why do you ask? And he said, changes are gonna happen. How you will watch over your people? And so she didn't know. And it was at that time that Coyote changed her into a rock to watch over her people forever. So that's the story about this first piece here. And then another piece that I want to mention is that one that is the second mask that you can see there. And the title there is Coyote. And Lillian told me that it's not a coyote, that is a bear. And that she had told to the museum so many times to change the title, but they don't listen to her. So please change it. So the thing is that that I think they put Coyote because Coyote is a very important a very important figure in the Native American culture, and is like the trickster. In Spanish is called el embaucador. It's a person that sometimes is a bad character and sometimes can be a very decent and liable fellow. So maybe that's why they call it the Coyote. Another piece that I found walking here in Portland is this one. I'm going to start passing this to you so you can see near. This one that is right there with the back blue is called River Guardian, and it's at the south waterfront. And this piece is, I think it's very related to the She Who Watches because it has two faces too. And they are overlooking, like one side is looking to the river, and the other one is looking towards the land. And this is like they are is taking care of each other, like both ways, right? The other piece that I'm going to talk about is the Wasco Totem, that is this one right here, and this is another important piece that Lillian has. And she told me this was one of her first ceramic pieces that she made, and that you could tell that it was her first piece because she made some mistakes on it, and as a new ceramist she didn't know about, like for example the ribs that they are coming from thin to thick, and they should be the opposite. So, and also she was telling me about the belly bottom, that is the connection to the Mother Earth, and also about the bones representing the story that she remembers as a young woman. And I'm going to read the story to you. I remember as a young woman the bones of my grandmother being returned from home from the Smithsonian, along with the remains of about 120 people, and with hundreds of artifacts that had been stolen. So I definitely question, in many cases, are archaeologists scholars or thieves? We bury all the people and the artifacts in mass graves just outside the village of Wisham, which is where the people had lived. We had to make a giant grave out of concrete, and we had to put rebar all around so that the grave robbers couldn't break in and steal them again. I believe that most people are well-intentioned, but I still think it's important that people ask the question, are archaeologists, scholars, or thieves? Another piece that I'm gonna talk about is right there, and is called Men in Conflict. Is this one right here? Thank you very much. Is this one right here, and is actually, Lillian told me that is actually Woman in Conflict. So this piece down here, first I want to ask you, what do you think about this piece? It looks like it's like that, like it has a base and it's all good, right? Nice, huh? Well, this was an accident in the kiln, and maybe if you're a ceramist, you will wonder why are those bricks down there? So the thing is that the piece got stuck in the kiln, and she was firing with her friend Rick Bartow, and he decided to take apart the bricks of his kiln and give the whole piece to Lillian because it was beautiful like that. So now she has the whole piece. And it's really nice. If you can see it, it's not here in the museum, but if you see it in the website, if you see all the sizes, it looks really, really nice. And so the conflict was resolved like that. The other piece that I'm going to talk about is Dancing with the Wind, and it's the first one there. And yeah, that one, it got my attention because it has a lot of like texture, and she's using the shells to print, and it's like an animal, and she has a whole series of those, that kind, with the wooden base and like faces of animals and things. And I think this piece kind of like gives you the idea of another thing that we have in common, Lillian and me, that is that a lot of ceramists, we find working with clay, we find a relation with nature. So this doesn't happen when we work with other mediums, but with clay, it's something that happens immediately, and you feel like connected with the universe. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about, or more like a lot, about my story and where I'm coming from. So I'm coming from Mexico, and I was working, like I told you, as an artist also in Mexico, but I majored in graphic design. I worked as a designer for a couple of years, and then I finally decided to be just an artist and start giving classes and trying to do a lot of things just as an artist. Coming back to the associations here in this country, when I arrive here and I start to see all the support that we artists have here, it feels like everybody has an opportunity. It's difficult to be an artist, but at least it feels that it's possible. In Mexico, it's not that possible. I know here, I belong to two co-ops, like galleries, and I know the artists there, and two of the artists are here, thank you very much. And I belong to the association that is called Artistic Portland in downtown, and another one that is Alberta Street Gallery in Alberta Street. And I know the artists there, like you can see some of the people, they live in their car just to get follow their dreams to be an artist. Other artists, they do all the work with recycled materials just to lower the cost and be keep working as an artist. So there's a lot of people that they just want to do it, and it's something that we have inside that we just need to do it, and sometimes it's difficult. But the good thing is that it feels like there's the need for good art here in US, and there are people that appreciate the art. I was studying in the different cities where I live here in US. I live in Dallas, Texas, in Santa Barbara, California, and in Portland, and I study in all those places. I study art and ceramics and paintings and engraving. But also I was exhibiting there. I was doing exhibitions, and I was doing workshops. My last workshop here in Portland was in libraries here, doing paper mache with kids. And then after that, I didn't tell you about this. So this was some of the work that I did in Mexico. I was in fine arts, and I was doing this ephemeral art. I'm going to pass it to you so you see better. There are pieces that are to be installed outside for the people to see and almost like to play with them, because they start disappearing with the time, and they start to if it rains or something, they're just to be there outside. So you can pass this around. Thank you. And then after living here for a while in US, I moved to Asia, first to China. And in China, I paint a series of Chinese people. I didn't bring any of that because it was like too many things, but I can tell you about it. It was people in the street. In China, there's always people in the street, like always. And my paintings were about these vendors and these people. like I was trying to portray the Chinese people, but they were not very happy about it because I was, in my view, as a foreigner, you see them like squatting with high heels, eating in the street. And when people entered the museum where I was exhibiting, they were like, why are you painting this? Like, you had to paint us with the, with the nice Chinese dress doing a dance or something. And I was like, well, that's what I see in the street. I was feeling kind of like Diego Rivera, like no, we don't have that. And yes, you have, but they don't want it for you to see it, right? So that was in China. And then I moved to Malaysia in 2009. And it was where I start my work in ceramics. Why? Because I got this cultural shock that many people talk about it. And it didn't happen in China, but it happened in Malaysia because there's 3 cultures living in the same city. There's Chinese, Indian, and Malay. And the slogan of the country is Malaysia #1, which is like everybody, we are the same. So they try to unify, to do a union between all these 3 cultures. It's not like there's Chinatown. No. Like everybody is the same. So you can see these Chinese ladies with the super short skirt that you almost can't see the underwear. And then you see the other ones with the sari. And then you see the other ones with the burqa in the same place all together. So I didn't know what to paint. At that time I was painting and I didn't know what I could do, what could focus on. So I knew how to do ceramics already, so I went to this studio to start doing ceramics, and at some point I decided to buy my wheel and my kiln, and then I start, working with that, and in Malaysia it's like 95 degrees and 87 humidity approximately every day of the year. So already with that, it's already an adventure, and just trying to find the food that you eat, like a regular piece of ham, or just driving, because they drive in the other side of the street, all that is already like very challenging. After that, the real trouble began, and I moved to India. And in India, I was like, what I was thinking, like moving with an electric kiln to India. Like everybody knows that there are power cuts in India. I think I was the only one that I didn't know. And to make it more fun, these power cuts, they change them like every month. For example, like 1 month they're gonna do it like 10 to 2 p.m. and the next month they're gonna do it to 2 to 6. So you never know when you can fire. A kiln like the kiln that I have, that is around there in one of the pictures there, I had to fire like 9 hours straight. So you cannot have power cuts on that 9 hours. And I got the best like electrician that I could have there. Even he was telling me, I think I'm not Indian, because the people here tell you one thing and then they do another thing. But he was really on time and always doing whatever he was saying he was doing. The first day that we did the test firing in the house, the voltage was not high enough in the house. It was just like barely, like right there. So it was day, and we were fine. But when we put the first light on, the fuse box caught fire, and you imagine like the thing that happened in the house. There was like 7 people working in the house. There was like 2 guards, 2 maids, a lot of people there, and everybody's like, fire, fire. So we never could do any firings or any ceramics in India. So since I couldn't do any firing, then I started my journey in photography. I really wanted to portray these beautiful and amazing colors of India and the people there. And it was when I started like traveling with people from India and doing these workshops just in photography. And I even learned to travel with them. And it was a whole experience to go and eat the local food without getting sick and just going to these little places. And I had the best photographer teachers. And it was an amazing experience. So I'm going to pass this to you. And actually, this picture here, it got an award. The workshop that I was taking was sponsored by Sony. And this picture got an award as the best portrait picture. And I enjoy taking pictures of people very much, especially in India, because I'm just walking and I just look and take the picture, I keep walking. Here's kind of like more tricky because people get mad if you take pictures of them. But over there, if they say something, I was already like 2 blocks away and I didn't care. And then after that, I moved to Ho Chi Minh City. And when I move from country to country, I always try to keep working, even if my things and my materials and the wheel, it was not coming. I just go and find any tools that I can work with, like the spoon of the kitchen, and I go find clay, and I start working with whatever I have. And this piece was with coils, and I start doing it, and it started getting bigger and bigger until it got really big, as you can see here. Here in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, that is well known as Saigon, I was working with this Japanese guy that have his studio there. And it was really nice because he was telling us that the best tools that they have, they are your hands. And also I learned patience from him because at some point I got with this piece inside the studio because I was doing it in my house, but then I wanted to fire and to do the glaze on it. And these pieces, when you are glazing them, you need to put the glaze, like the water inside. And since this piece is hollow, it has a hole here, then I had to figure it out how I was going to put the glaze and then do some movements, take the rest of the glaze out, and then that was it. So I arrived and I asked him if he could give me the glaze. And he was not giving me the glaze. And I was like, what's going on here? So what do I do? And I was just waiting, and he was just there looking at me, and he decided to go and do some other things. And finally, I was like, I think he wants me to practice how I'm going to do this, because this piece is super heavy. And imagine with the glaze inside, it's going to be more heavy. So I start to do Tai Chi with the piece, okay, look at me. Yeah, I can do it. I can. So I start practicing there, and then he gave me the glaze, and finally I could glaze it. And actually, this piece was sold in Xiamen after that. I moved to Xiamen, China. And in Xiamen, Xiamen is across from Taiwan, and it's an island, and it's very nice. And oh my God, I forget one thing about India. I was going to tell you something. Let me just go back to the India moment. I was going to tell you that my electrician was super cool and that he was on time always. And I was going to tell you that in India, sometimes you have to learn to the way they speak. If they tell you it's going to be 100, it's going to be 300. And if they tell you it's going to be 3 days, it's going to be maybe 7 days. And if they tell you soon, it's not going to be soon. And that my kids can tell you about that, right? That's why I remember I was like, wait a minute, I forgot about the soon, madam, soon. They were always telling me, when is going to be that? Soon, madam, soon. Never happened. So in Xiamen, my pieces were, the people that was getting my pieces were foreigners mostly, and I got to connect the kiln in Xiamen. Yeah, and actually it was a whole process because I need this cable in the houses where we were living. It was, the house didn't have the connection, but the connection where we could plug the kiln, it was 2 blocks away. So we had to cross the street and make all this hole for the cable to go up the hill to the house where the connection was. Very hard. very hard, but it was done. And my work was like kind of with this influence of Chinese, Japanese, like very flat, very plain. Like I even do these things like to eat rice. And I was recycling the clay a lot because in China and in India and in all these countries, I was seeing that that was something not very important for them. And for me, it was very important to keep recycling even in my studio. So I always do that even when I'm there in China. And I can pass this to you too. When I was there in Xiamen, I have one of my first art talks, and you can see the pictures down here. I'm going to pass it to you later so you can see them because they're very small. And this first art talk, it was organized by a Chinese guy, and he wanted to give Chinese people more awareness of the different cultures. Because sometimes in China, they're so like, you know, they have so much cultures and traditions that they don't see other things. This talk was translated in Chinese, and I was talking mostly about my career, like I studied graphic design, and then I went to Italy and to India and all those things that I did. Also, another important thing that I did there, it was these workshops that I organized for kids, and this was like a 40 kids workshop, and the nice thing about it, it was like all the kids were mixed, like from 4 to 14 years old, because I think in the society, like people, we are all together, right? We're not in groups, like, no, the 40 years old here, like, okay, you can sit here because you're 20. We're all together. So how come in the schools, the kids, we divide them into groups of ages? So in these workshops, I was trying for them to collaborate in the same painting, a group of 10 kids of all ages. They were the little ones doing something, the big ones maybe organizing, but all together they finished these pieces that you're gonna see here. And they were very, very nice. And these workshops, they inspired me to do the workshops here in Milagro Theater with William Hernandez. We did a couple of workshops. The workshops that we did, one was called Creando Visiones, that was in Teatro Milagro, and the other one was here at the museum with Mujeres Adelante, and it was an all-day workshop, and it was super, super nice to work with them. Now I'm going to talk a little bit of my artist residence that I have in Delhi. This was a very exciting part in my career as an artist. When I moved to India, I think at some point when you go and live in this country, you kind of love it or hate it. And for me, it was like, you know, I think I was Indian in my other life. I kind of clicked like a lot, and now when I go, I have another family that adopt me there, and they open their houses for me. And when I went to do this residency, you know, Delhi is a super chaotic city, full of cows everywhere and trash. And the place where I was doing the residency, it was very like an oasis, like very calm and very nice. And the artists, we all have an individual space and room to work. And my plan consists on taking photography first, doing the photos of the people, and then doing the paintings. So I did a series of oil paintings when I was there 1 month. And the subject was more like the things that foreigners we see, that Indian people is like the most common thing for them. Like, for example, drinking from the glass, like from far, like the tea, the chai that they have everywhere, and it's like a religion for them. So all these traditions, I did a different painting with each of them. But more than my work, what amazed me, it was the people that was working there, the other artists. And their work was amazing. They have, this is the residence there, and that's the paintings that I was doing. They have all ages people, like very young and other people more senior. And what they were doing, it was like, for example, this girl from Greece, she's Ismini, and she was doing this art that resembles the, what's it called? The Havelis. This is the Havelis. This is one thing that they have in Rajasthan, where the ladies used to be inside, so they can see outside, but they cannot see them. And her work was like a courting. She was working with textiles. So she did the same thing, like inspired in these Havelis. The other artist is Anandita, and she was working with wet clay. And at the beginning, I was like, what's that? Because I was working also with clay at some point, but the wet clay, she had to do it very, very fast, and she had a lot of people helping her to do this. And then she was making a video or pictures to have this in the gallery. At some point, she took the whole thing to the gallery, like the clay and everything, and she did the performance there in the gallery. She's from India, and she had a lot of like sponsors there in India, and she was doing a lot of things there. Another amazing work was this one. This was from a Brazilian artist, and she was doing a costume out of bells, little bells from head to toe. She was gonna dance, but she broke her leg like 2 days before the performance, so she had to hire this guy and taught him how to do the movements. And the movements were like a Brazilian dance, and then the costume was like Indian. So it was a combination between India and Brazil together. And she went to do this in a very public place, and this was the whole idea. So, because in India you cannot do anything in the street without being followed by like 100 people. So this guy was like just walking and dancing, and all the people around seeing him, and we went around and around for a couple of times. Let me see what else I'm missing. So the work that Lillian does, coming back to Lillian, I admire her work a lot, and I admire that she's so involved in the community and with other artists, and that her work creates awareness and educate people. And also, I would love for my work to reach and help as much as her work does. And I hope to have the same influence in the community at some point in my career. And I always like to help people, and I'm always inviting people to my studio if they want to see how I work, or if they want to bring a group of people to the studio to see it. And I love to give talks, and I can go to any place to give talks to. What I would like to tell you just at the end is just like my father told me once, do whatever you want to do, but do it right. That's what he used to tell me. And I think what he means is like doing your passion, what you're passionate about it. And he was a biologist, and he was researching mushrooms, my father, and is another person that I admire a lot. And when he started studying mushrooms, there was no books or anything that he could use to study. So all his life, what he did was he wrote 20 books about mushrooms, and one of them is like the most read book in all Latin America. So I think that's someone that is really inspiring and also Lillian, like she embraces like her culture and does all this amazing work. So thank you for being here.